We would now like to officially welcome you to City Year's first ever Breakfast for Champions event. We are so happy that you all woke up this early today to get here. So kudos to all of you. My name is Abigail James Van Hasslen, and I am the Director of Development and Communications at City Year. With me today is Jeff May, the Managing Director of Impact at City Year. We both are new. We've started in the last year in the heat of the pandemic. So as you can imagine, we haven't met a lot of you in person. So we're very excited to be here today. I also want to say that you all look very good, and it's good to know that the pandemic did not make you lose your fashion skills. Wonderful. You all look great.
Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Jeff May, and I hope that I'm involved in that well-dressed category. I got it? Yeah. Wore a pocket square just for you. But we want to thank everyone for being here so early, as Abigail said, to celebrate our pandemic heroes, our teachers, faculty, and our AmeriCorps members. Leading up to this event, we hosted breakfasts at our 9 San Antonio Independent School partner schools, where we served our teachers just to say thank you. Thank you for what they do. Thank you for their sacrifices and even those things that we know nothing about. So let's give our teachers a round of applause this morning. Can we do that? Our San Antonio community helped us make this happen, and we want to thank HEB for providing the food and all of the proceeds, especially for this morning's event. And they also helped out to offset some of those additional costs. You've already made an impact today on the lives of our pandemic heroes, and we want to thank all of you for playing your part and for being here this morning. So please give yourselves a round of applause this morning.
Yes, and it really was incredible because this is our first time ever with an event like this that we actually went into the schools and made that part of the cost of this. And so your event tickets, your sponsorships all contributed to that. So thank you so much. So before we start the content, we would like to thank our sponsors for making this event happen. For timing reasons, could you please hold your applause till the end as we thank our sponsors?
So a big thank you to our silver sponsors, Ann and Bob Parker, Archpoint, BD, Busy Darling, Harvey E. Najam, Pizza Hut, and Lynn and Rabbi Stahl.
And to our gold sponsors, we would like to thank Deloitte, Harvey E. Najam again, thank you. I know you weren't able to make it today, but thank you. They are recording us now, so thank you, Harvey. The Phoenix Charitable Foundation, we're very grateful. Renee and Marty Wender, Valero, and the Williams Chadwick Charitable Fund of the San Antonio Area Foundation. Barbara and George, that is a very big mouthful every time I say it, but we are so grateful for your support.
And we need to take this time to thank our, go ahead, give you clap, you clap. We want to take this time to thank our school breakfast, food, and beverage sponsors, HEB, and our education sponsor, the University of Texas at San Antonio, who so graciously provided each one of you on your tables right now a copy of Admiral William H. McRaven's #1 New York Times best-selling book, Make Your Bed. So please give them a round of applause for a great book you have in front of you this morning.
And last, but certainly not least, we want to thank Valero, our presenting sponsor of this event. Your support was right from the infancy of it, and we are so, so grateful for that. There you are. Sorry, I was locating you. We are so grateful for that. Right from the get, you jumped on, and thank you for that, and thank you to all of you for your support. Please, can we do one last round of applause to everyone in here and all of our sponsors? Thank you.
Thank you all, and without further ado, I would love to have you join me in welcoming Rick Cavender, a City Year board member, Red Jacket Society member, and longtime champion of the work that we do. He's going to come and introduce our keynote speaker for the evening. Rick Cavender.
Good morning, everybody. What a beautiful morning it is, and how appropriate it is on this Veterans Day that I get to this beautiful honor. This is an amazing honor for me to introduce a true American hero, one of the most highly respected military commanders to ever lead men and women in U.S. military operations. Admiral William H. McRaven is a retired U.S. Navy four-star admiral and the former chancellor of the University of Texas system. Prior to becoming chancellor, McRaven was the commander of U.S. Special Operations Command, during which time he led a force of 69,000 men and women and was responsible for conducting counterterrorism operations worldwide. Prior to taking this command, he commanded special operation forces at every level. His career included combat during Desert Storm in both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. He commanded the troops that captured Saddam Hussein and the valiant rescue operation to save the life of Captain Richard Phillips, being held captive by Somali pirates. McRaven is also credited for organizing and overseeing the execution of Operation Neptune Spear, the special ops raid that led to the killing of Osama bin Laden in 2011. For his heroic role, he was elected runner-up for Time Magazine of the Year, Person of the Year in 2011. Few names on that list. The Pope, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, by the way. So the Pope gets on the same list with the Admiral. It's fantastic. As the chancellor of the UT system, he led one of the nation's largest and most respected systems of higher education. As the chief executive officer of the UT system, McRaven oversaw 14 institutions that educated 220,000 students and employed 20,000 faculty and more than 80,000 healthcare professionals. Admiral McRaven is recognized nationally as an authority on U.S. foreign policy as he advised Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and other U.S. leaders on defense issues. He currently serves as a senior advisor to the Lazard Financial Advisory, as a professor at the LBJ School of Public Affairs, and he's on the boards of the Council on Foreign Relations, the National Football Foundation, the International Crisis Group, the Mission Continues, and ConocoPhillips. Born in North Carolina, the son of an Air Force colonel, Admiral McRaven spent his childhood years right here in San Antonio. Did y'all know that? Roosevelt High School, go Rough Riders, there he is. He graduated from the University of Texas at Austin. Sorry, Taylor. And I meant to do this too. In 1977. 1977, I was there. That was the year Earl Campbell won the Heisman trophies, I remember, Bill. With a degree in journalism, received his master's degree from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, 1991. In 2012, he was honored as a Distinguished Alumnus Award for the University of Texas. He met his lovely wife, Georgianne, while they were students at UT in Austin. They have 3 grown children. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Admiral Bill McRaven.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, thanks. Thank you. Hey, Rick, thanks very much for that very kind introduction. It is great to be back here in San Antonio. And let me also thank a couple of folks. Valero, who I have worked with in the past, really appreciate your sponsorship and all the other sponsors that are here today for this incredibly worthwhile event and project that is going on here in San Antonio. And I also want to recognize Taylor, Amy, and Peggy for the remarkable work they have done at the University of Texas, San Antonio. You've really made everybody in San Antonio and Texas proud. It is great to have you at the helm. I also do want to take a moment to thank the veterans who are in the audience today as they stood. You know, like all of those that came before you and all those that will follow you, I guarantee you your service to the nation will be one of your proudest achievements in life. It is the nature of being a veteran. We are honored to wear the uniform. We are honored to represent it while we're in uniform and after we leave. So each of us that wore the uniform was blessed to wear the flag on our uniform and represent America, and frankly, it just doesn't get any better than that. I'm also honored today to have an opportunity to recognize the great folks who have given so much to the city of San Antonio through the AmeriCorps program. That includes not only the folks in the red coats here, but of course all the faculty and the teachers that are supporting the educational system here in San Antonio. You know, when I was the chancellor of the University of Texas system, I was often asked, what was the most important issue facing the United States today? And I think my answer always, I know my answer always surprised folks. My answer was always the same, K through 12 education. The statistics surrounding public education system are alarming. The number of students who fail to get into college or onto a technical education track should frighten all of us. Study upon study has shown that an education is the key to a better life. We know that. The greater the educational achievement, the greater the individual satisfaction in life. Those with an education are more likely to stay married, to be healthier, to make more money, and less likely to have legal problems, family problems, and financial problems. Education, in general, will make people's lives better. So those of you who are working as student success coaches, mentoring, teaching, and aiding the young men and women in San Antonio and around Texas are making a huge difference in their lives. You are putting them on a path to success, a path that they may not even appreciate until much later in life. But rest assured, the work you are doing is good and noble and exceptionally worthwhile. As a father, a Texan, and a hometown San Antonio boy, I thank you for all your hard work and sacrifice. I do have one request, though. As you continue to work with these remarkable young men and women, these remarkable young students, I would ask that you think beyond just the academics and focus also on the intangibles, the qualities that every person needs to be a good student, a good parent, a good friend, and a good person. You know, I was fortunate in my military career and in my time as chancellor to meet some remarkable people. Those that were successful had a code that they lived by, a code of conduct or a code of honor, an understanding of where their moral compass pointed. It is what made them both successful, and I would offer what made them heroic. You know, Webster defines a hero as someone we admire because of their noble qualities. I love this characterization. A lot of times I don't turn to Webster, but if you think about it, it is someone we admire because of their noble qualities. Each one of you in this room has noble qualities that make you heroic. You don't have to charge a hill, you don't have to run into a burning building or take on City Hall to be a hero. You just have to try to be good every day and do good for people. And it will be important for you to pass on these qualities to the students that you are mentoring. Now, I've also learned over and over again that these noble qualities are universal. They're not bound by gender or ethnicity, by age or financial status, or by sexual orientation. I have found that good people everywhere have this internal code of conduct that helps them to be successful. So let me touch on just a few of these noble qualities that I think are important. Let me start with courage. Winston Churchill once said that courage was the most important quality in life because it guaranteed all the rest. Without the courage to face the challenges of life, to face your fears, to face the indignations, to face the failures, to face the tragedies, then all the other qualities may not matter. I found that courage lies in each of us. No one is naturally brave. Having spent a lot of time in combat, I can tell you it doesn't just come naturally. We're all afraid of something, but the true heroes in life find a way to put their fears aside and bring that courage forth. I recently wrote about a young woman named Ashley White. She was an Army officer from Ohio who served with my Special Forces unit in Afghanistan. Like a lot of you here, particularly in the red coats, you volunteered. She volunteered to do the hard work. She knew there were risks. She knew there were dangers. But she also knew that the work she and her fellow soldiers were doing was vitally important. And every night, Lieutenant Ashley White would board a helicopter with her fellow soldiers and fly into combat somewhere in Afghanistan. She was afraid most of those nights, but she had the courage to face her fears and to overcome her fears. Tragically, she was killed on a mission one night when she stepped on a pressure plate mine. But her legacy of courage inspired hundreds of her fellow soldiers to fight through the difficult times, and it inspired thousands upon thousands of young men and women who heard about her story to be stronger in the face of daily challenges. To teach your young students courage, you need to encourage them to just take one step forward. Take one step forward to overcome their fears. Take one step forward to fight injustice. Take one step forward to challenge the bullies. Take one step forward to follow their dreams. Sometimes that's all it takes, is just one step. Ashley White took one step every night to get on her helicopter. It was a small step, but had great significance in her pursuit of courage. and sometimes that's all it takes. But courage doesn't mean you have to give up your life for your country. Courage is what each of you exhibit every day, and your courage is what you can convey to those who you teach and mentor. If they learn courage, then there is nothing that will hold them back from success. In addition to courage, I think you must learn to be humble, and we must teach people to be humble. Today, with social media demanding each of us kind of showcase our daily highlight film, it's hard to be humble. But humility is really, I think, the essence of a noble life. Several years ago, I was in Dallas at the Cooper Institute, and I was the keynote speaker that evening, and before the event, we had a small private dinner. Before dinner was served, I did the usual thing. I kind of walked around the table and introduced myself to my dinner companions. Seated at the table were my host, Dr. Kenneth Cooper, and his wife, Millie, Dallas Cowboy Hall of Fame quarterback Roger Staubach and his wife, Mary Ann, another nice couple from Dallas, and then an elderly couple that was kind of sitting off to my left. As I introduced myself to the elderly couple, I didn't catch their last name. All I knew was that the husband was Charlie and his wife was Dottie. Well, during the course of the evening, I found out that Charlie had been a pilot in the Air Force many years ago. I told him that my father had been a pilot in the Air Force, raised here in San Antonio as a pilot, and my son was also in the Air Force. But as the dinner conversation went on, I tried to find out more about Charlie and about his wife, but he kind of kept deferring and kept coming back to me and my family. He just wanted to know about my children, about my wife and how we'd met. He wanted to know about my career in the Navy. He was incredibly kind and gracious. And toward the end of the evening, he invited me and my wife, Georgianne, down to New Braunfels, where he lived, to join them for a barbecue sometime. As I was leaving the small dinner, heading to the event, Roger Staubach comes up to me and he said, hey, I see you and Charlie were having a great conversation. I said, yeah, we were. So what a wonderful guy. Roger says, can you imagine what it must have been like? I said, what do you mean? I mean, imagine walking on the moon. Think of it. Only 12 men in the history of the world have walked on the moon. I said, I'm sorry, Roger, I still don't understand. What are you talking about? He said, Charlie Duke. What about Charlie? You didn't know? Know what? Charlie Duke was the youngest man ever to walk on the moon. Of course, I dropped my head and I'm thinking, of course, General Charles Duke, United States Air Force, the 10th and still the youngest man ever to walk on the moon. But, as I told Roger, I said, during our entire dinner conversation, never once did he happen to mention that one little, small, insignificant thing that he walked on the moon. And Roger said, I'm not surprised because Charlie is a very humble man. But I found out later that Charlie wasn't always humble, and he had come by it the hard way. After returning from the moon in 1972, Charlie Duke was a national hero. He was on TV and radio and had parades, and eventually that fame kind of went to his head. But a few years later, his wife Dottie became a Christian, and Charlie soon followed thereafter. And he learned the power of humility. Matthew 23:12 says, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. The Old Testament Proverbs says, with humility comes wisdom. The Quran tells us that the servants of the most merciful are those who walk upon the earth in humility. Every great faith recognizes the value of humility. To be humble is to recognize that one's intellect, one's physical strengths, one's wealth pale in comparison to the vastness, the complexity, the richness, the power, and the grandeur of the universe. Humility is born of respect for what we don't know and respect for what we cannot see. And if we are humbled by our place in the universe, then we are much more likely to see that our differences are infinitely small. The power of humility is what brings us closer together, and that is a quality worth teaching all our young students. Next, sacrifice. It is something that all of you are doing every day. You are sacrificing your time in order to help those that need you. My wife is the sponsor of a Navy ship destroyer called the USS Ralph Johnson, named after Medal of Honor recipient Ralph Johnson. Johnson was a 19-year-old African-American teenager from Charleston, South Carolina, when he enlisted in the Marine Corps. Within months of completing basic training, he was sent to Vietnam. Ralph was assigned to a reconnaissance unit called Texas Pete. Texas Pete, was a known hot sauce, and the Marines kind of fancied themselves as being kind of too hot to handle by the enemy. But in Ralph's first month in Vietnam, he found himself and his fellow Marines under attack on Hill 146. And surrounded by the enemy, the Marines fought valiantly, but soon the enemy reinforced their numbers and began to charge the hill. The small Marine force repelled the first wave of attackers, but the enemy kept coming. Soon it looked like the entire reconnaissance element of Texas Pete would be wiped out by a superior force. As the enemy charged the hill, a grenade landed in the foxhole where Private First Class Ralph Johnson and two of his fellow Marines were fighting. Without hesitation, Ralph jumped on the grenade and saved his fellow Marines, and he was killed instantly. His sacrifice was so inspiring that it rallied the Marines, and they fought off the enemy until American reinforcements could come. But that sacrifice would go on to inspire a lot more folks. This was 1968, at the height of the Civil Rights Movement and the race riots in the United States. And the story of Ralph Johnson spread quickly, that this young black Marine gave his life to save his fellow Marines, both white, helped heal a lot of wounds, and helped the military move forward in ways that might not have happened had Ralph Johnson not sacrificed his life that day. But sacrifice, like courage, doesn't mean you have to give your life. For most of us, our sacrifices are little acts of giving that build upon themselves and over time become something worthwhile, something remarkable. Just like what each of you are doing, the faculty, the teachers, and the student success coaches. Learning to sacrifice is easy. You start by giving a little bit of yourself every day. A little time to your friends, a little of your treasure to a worthy cause, a little love to your family. A little sacrifice can go a long, long way. And finally, let me talk about forgiveness. People today seem easily offended. We are quick to anger, and some people believe that every offensive act, no matter the intent, requires a swift rebuke. We think that the retribution, no matter how small or how large, will soothe our soul. It will not. In 2009, my soldiers were conducting combat missions in Afghanistan, and in a terribly tragic moment, a number of innocent civilians were killed in an operation. As I was preparing to go down and apologize to the Afghan father and ask his forgiveness, I talked to my Afghan senior officer, General Salam, and I asked him, what should I say to the father? What do you say to a father who has lost his adult children in war? When I posed the question, General Salam seemed a little perplexed. He said with complete confidence, the father will forgive you. How is that possible? I asked. Salam paused for a moment and he said, the Quran teaches us the value of mercy. The father will forgive you because it will take away his burden, not the burden of his loss, but the burden of his hatred and anger. Forgiveness is a great, great gift, not only to those that receive it, but to those that give it. That is a direct quote from Afghan General Salam. I went to the small village, and surrounded by 200 angry Afghans, I sat down with the father and asked for his forgiveness. And exactly as Salam had said, the father forgave me and said, we will not keep anything in our heart against you. For me, it was a great moment of reflection. If a father who lost his sons and a daughter could forgive me, why shouldn't I be able to forgive the small offenses that occur every day? Where is my honor and my dignity in putting aside the slights and the missteps and the occasional angry barbs? Let them go. It will help take the burden from you as well as those who offended you. As you inspire and mentor your young students, work equally hard to help them understand the importance of these few noble qualities and the others that are out there. The need to be men and women of great integrity, to follow the golden rule that we all understand, and to always treat others as you would have them treat you. You are preparing these students for college and for life, but you are also preparing them for a moment, a single moment that may change their lives forever. Lincoln once said that I will prepare, and someday my chance may come. Well, you are giving these students a chance that they may never have without your sacrifice, without your courage, without your humility, and yes, at times, without your forgiveness. And while I haven't met your students, I know who they are. They are the same men and women who worked for me after 9/11. They are a new generation of Americans. They are patriots, citizens who will become parents and teachers and doctors and soldiers and firefighters and nurses and coaches and friends and colleagues. I think back on the mission to get Osama bin Laden, and I know you would see the same qualities in these young folks that you see in your prodigies here in San Antonio. The mission to get bin Laden had 1,000 moving parts. We had helicopter pilots, old warrant officers with a lot of experience, but in the back of the helicopter, we had young soldiers who hadn't been out of high school for more than a year or two. We had Navy SEALs, all highly experienced, but helping them prepare for the mission were young intelligence analysts from the CIA and NSA and the National Geospatial Agency. We had Air Force pilots and young non-commissioned officers. We had Marines and sailors helping from afar. Every branch of the service, every age, every gender, every orientation, every ethnicity, every background, they were all present, all doing their jobs, all contributing to the success of that mission. And they were all there because someone in their life, someone like you, yes, someone exactly like you, helped them along the way. Einstein once said that the world is a very dangerous place, not because of the people in it who are evil, but because of the people in it who do nothing about it. Those of you who we are recognizing today, and those of you that are here in the room helping recognize them, are doing something about it. You are making the world a better place, and there is no more noble cause. So thank you very much for all that you do. And again, thank you, Rick, for inviting me here today. It is a great honor to be joining you. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Admiral McRaven. It is such an honor to have you here. I truly think we all will walk out of here a better person, or at least trying to be one, thanks to that speech. So truly, from the bottom of our heart, City Year really appreciates that you took the time to be here today. I would now like to invite our panel to the stage. You may notice that no, Bob Brevard did not change the way he looks and become Dr. Carney. But unfortunately, Bob Brevard actually was in the hospital. He is completely fine, and he wants you all to know he is okay, and he is still writing his 2 articles a week. He wants you all to read it. He actually requested that I do that, but please keep him in your thoughts. And we also really would like to thank Dr. Carney for stepping in such late notice. We really appreciate you. And with that, I'll let you take it away, and I hope you enjoy the panel.
Good morning. As mentioned, I'm Philip Carney, and I am a recovering school principal. I've spent the last probably 6-7 years working with campuses, working with districts, to really help transform the way that we approach education through implementing social, emotional, and learning practices throughout campuses in a practical way, and also through focusing on bringing restorative practices to help make schools a safer and a healthier learning environment for both students and for all of the adults and for the community. So a little bit of background there with me. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss how schools and students are moving forward to recovering from this pandemic. In many ways, something that really has stuck out to me as I've talked to campuses and teachers across the state is that while we've talked about the pandemic and acknowledged verbally the pandemic, in some ways we're struggling because people are pretending like it's still 2018. And that's something that schools are really struggling with. So although we knew that the pandemic was creating these gaps in education, one of the things that we're looking at now and we're seeing is the data that shows us kind of really what we're confronting on a daily basis. To give an example, the San Antonio Independent School District, which is where I started my teaching career, reported that the percentage of students who met or exceeded grade level in math decreased by 15% this past year. The data also shows that COVID-19 deepened the historic inequities that our school communities have been dealing with for years. So for example, in Bexar County, white students showed a 15% decrease in math scores, while our African American student scores lowered 32%. And our Latinx student scores, they dropped 34%. And I don't say that to depress you, but what I say is it gives us insight into the important work that we have in front of us. Now the good news is, and there is good news, there is a report and a recent study from Johns Hopkins University that showed the positive impact of City Year specifically and the support that it has on struggling students in our schools. And we're fortunate today to be able to focus on one of those such schools, Sidney Lanier High School, which is located on the west side here in San Antonio. So for the next few minutes, what we're going to do is really discuss what happened during the pandemic, going back. We're going to discuss what we're currently seeing in schools with this work on a daily basis. And then importantly, we're going to look ahead to what is needed to be done in the upcoming days, months, years coming before us. So at this point, what I'd like to do before we start is I'd like for our esteemed panelists to just briefly introduce themselves, and then we will get into the questions. Dr. Ortiz, if you will go first.
Good morning. My name is Moises Ortiz, and I'm the proud principal of Sidney Lanier High School, the pride of the West Side in 78207, a beautiful community of learners. This is my third high school. I've also principaled 2 middle schools, and I'd like to, after listening to this very inspiring speech before, think I am still not recovering. I am in educational combat. And I love every single day that I report to that duty, and I take it as an honor. Thank you for having me here.
Hello. Hey, good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. My name is Adriana Abundis. I have had the blessing of teaching, leading, and transforming in the San Antonio Independent School District for the past 10 years of my professional career. In 2020, I was recognized as the San Antonio Secondary Teacher of the Year, and I'm blessed to represent our West Side. Thank you all so much. I come from a Mexican-American working class community where my parents were both factory workers. And while they showed me their beautiful talents and strength, I also saw them silenced a lot in my upbringing. So a lot of what brings me here as an educational advocate and warrior is to elevate those voices of people that often get erased or not heard, and also elevate the genius of our beautiful west side of San Antonio. It's an honor to be here today.
I'm going to go ahead and interrupt. I think that's that humility piece. She was middle school teacher of the year, and the following year she was high school teacher of the year, selected by her colleagues. We're very blessed to have her.
Hello. My name is Anthony Rodriquez, and I'm a product of SISD. I went to school at Daysville Elementary, middle school at the Foya Middle School, and lastly graduating from Sidney Lanier High School, so proud Vogue. Upon graduating from Lanier High School, I went to Norwich University with the intention of commissioning as an officer. That didn't go as planned due to medical reasons, but I decided to stay up at school and finish. One of the biggest things was I never had someone who had left, even the barrio of San Antonio, make it to another school outside of the state and really stay out there for a good while. So coming back to San Antonio after graduation, I definitely wanted to give back in some ways, and City Year, finding out City Year was serving at Lanier High School, I knew that was the best opportunity for me.
Excellent. So before we can move forward, I think it's important to just for a moment look back on where we've been. So that's where I want to start in the past. Dr. Ortiz, we'll start with you. We often focus a lot on students when we discuss the pandemic, right? If they're not for the children, we wouldn't be in schools, they wouldn't be there. But another important factor are the adult staffs as well. So in your role as principal, Thinking about the whole school community, how were you able to navigate the safety and mental health of both your students and your staff throughout the pandemic?
It's a very big question. But I look back as I was focusing and trying to gather my thoughts for this panel, and I look back on a reading that I did probably back in 2002 when I was trying to poach you to be one of my teachers back at Harris Middle School. And that's a true story. And so I read a book that said, if you don't feed the teachers, they eat the kids. And so it sounds funny, but it was a very impacting book to me that I then took through my trajectory of my career to make sure that I implemented that philosophy as we went along. And so as a principal, you're absolutely correct. It's not just the students. We always say the students are our focus, but you've got to keep the mental stability and well-being of the teachers always at heart, as well as the community. So we triangulate everything to make sure that we come together for kids. And so what we did was the first is I dropped to my knees and prayed and said, this is not going away anytime soon. I'm a learned man, and I know how viruses work. I'm not a doctor, but this is not going away next week, and this is going to get seriously distressful for our school. So I contacted my administrative team that I was very blessed to have, and we have our own war room, if you will, and we decided to get ahead of it. And that was all about how do we deploy technology to our kids. We were the first school to make sure that every single one of our kids had a laptop at home so that we could communicate. Then how do we come together to make sure that our teachers feel safe? Because one, they're scared as well. They have children. They're at home, their own well-being. How do we ameliorate that? And throughout the process, we came up with a wellness committee of teachers that had voice on how do we take care of one another, as well as how do we take care of the kids. And then that part of vulnerability, of letting the teachers know that while I am the principal, I still am of flesh and blood and fear. And so while it is important for me to set the course for this school, it is also important to you to know that I too am scared, that I too am worried about my family, that I too have two 83-year-old parents that are still alive that I look through a window and wave hello because I'm afraid to expose them. So it really was coming together as a family to really deal with this distressing time. And I think that as a result of those collective efforts, we were able to garner a plan and a vision that really guided our kids to feel comfortable and our communities to understand that we were there for them as well. And so that included a lot of public messaging, live Facebook every Friday with parents in English and in Spanish, and constant communication with our teachers to see what their needs were.
Absolutely, absolutely. As we transition now to talk about students, you probably as a teacher had the most direct contact of anybody in the school with your students. So from your perspective as a teacher, working day in and day out, what were some of the struggles that you saw your students deal with both inside and outside of the classroom during the pandemic?
I think the most apparent was that we were all collectively living through a state of survival. And we're still living in that survivance. We're still attempting every day to wake up and to stay positive and to be the people that our family need us to be. In high school, and really all throughout our schooling process, it really affects, in our formative years, we're really affected by our sense of identity. When we take away that interaction from youth, when they don't have the same opportunities to speak to one another, to see people that look like them, to model interaction, they can't develop their sense of identity as well as they could have had we had things back to normal. I saw a lot of lack in confidence, and I think that comes from even adults not knowing what to do, right? Kids were then forced to create a plan on their own. I think what they also saw and what we're struggling with was the inequities that they saw in their families. Most of our students had parents who were essential workers. And I think living through that and seeing their parents go to work every day really impacted how they felt in the classroom. It was very distracting, right? Your heart's always going to be with your parents and their safety. And I think it allowed them to also, and they're still processing this, understand how significant educational attainment was in who got to work at home and who got to work in the front lines. So in an unfortunate circumstance, I think it also propelled their desire to attain more educational success. But even though we can't choose our trauma, we could choose our healing. And I saw a lot of healing in our classrooms. I saw students show up every day. Now, our classes were limited in size due to safety, and the students that did have the opportunity to come in class were so grateful. They were so kind. They knew that being in the classroom was a privilege. And it kind of reawoke this sense of an education and schooling being something that they can be proud of, something that is engaging, something that they know not only do they deserve, but it's something that will continue to inspire them. Right now, we're still living in this survivance. So we see a lot of students struggling with social interaction, with struggling in understanding how to treat one another, and with struggling how to be vulnerable, right? They've been vulnerable, and at times they weren't able to get help. So it's a lot harder to be vulnerable now. I think the staff and the leaders at Lanier, all of us here, for example, are doing a great job reminding ourselves that schooling is not just content, but it's humanity. It's about taking those kids outside and listening to them and sharing with them that we care, that we are living through the exact same trauma, and we're gonna get through it together. So we're still steering the ship on that one. We're still trying our best, but we're definitely a team, and I'm very hopeful for the end of this year and onward.
Absolutely, and I think it's so important what you bring out, that it's not just that there has been real trauma that has been experienced by our students and our teachers, but there's also this other side of healing. And that healing is something that we can help with by not necessarily just bringing curriculum, right, and strategies, but just bringing an ear, being there for them in that sense of human beings, right? So I love how you brought that out. And as we transition with City Year, obviously last year was a very non-traditional year in terms of City Year service. So with it being different, what would you say from your perspective that were the biggest needs of the students and the teachers that you worked with in your capacity?
So from our past year, I think the biggest need for the students and teachers was having someone there just to reassure them that these problems were there and it was okay. It wasn't on the students, it wasn't on the teachers. It was a problem that we couldn't control, but something that we had to really adjust to and really be adaptable to. And I think City Year did a really good portion of ensuring the teachers were okay, ensuring that the students were there. We may not have seen their faces. Most of the time, the students we knew were initials on Zoom, initials on Teams. But we got to know them through, if they messaged us personally one-on-one through a private message, we're able to talk to them, have those conversations with them. I know my co from last year grew a really great relationship because they were a transgender student and my co was transgender as well. So they really grew a great bond with something, even if it was in person or online, they grew that bond and they grew that need where it was like, I'm not alone. I'm here with someone who understands me, who can see where I'm coming from. So I think to go on with that, with teachers, I think they really helped us ensure that what we were doing, we weren't doing the bare minimum, that we were doing what we could, and that we could assist in any way possible. I think as ACMs, we definitely took a step back, and the biggest thing I would say, most if not all of my peers joined City Year for selfless service, and we felt we weren't doing as much as we could because we were on Zoom, and we're here trying to talk to the students, our ABCs, our academic, behavioral, and coursework, our attendance, behavioral, and coursework. And if we're not, if they're not on the Zoom, or if they're only on the Zoom call 3 times out of the 5 times they're supposed to be on, or if they're only on, once a week, but they're getting the work done every day, how are we able to track that? How are we able to kind of do what we volunteered to sign up to do? But the teachers were there to let us know, like, you're doing good, you're doing, great, If you can't do it directly with the students, let's do some phone calls to the parents. And I think we grew a really great bond with the parents too, to understand, hey, you know, I'm working this time to this time. I barely see my student. You know, I call them, I ask if they're on, they say they're on, and there's no accountability there. So us being able to talk to the parents and really grow that great relationship and bond with them, I think we took a lot from that. And then we understood more from a parent perspective about how they were working with their students.
Excellent, excellent. And so looking now kind of where we are today, I mentioned the data and some of those inequities that really have come through in that data as a result of the pandemic. So as we look at that, we often leave out the mental health and the social emotional piece of this. Because if you think about it, everybody's talking about learning loss and learning gaps and all of those things. But if our students aren't healthy, they won't be in a position to be able to make that catch-up growth that needs to be made. And so kind of along that line, Ms. Abundis, we know that scores have dropped in math. But do you see a difference in the social emotional skills of your students post-pandemic as we're working through this school year?
Thank you for the question. I want to start with the math portion because those are some striking statistics, right? In our math classes, we treat math as a social action, right? We can't combine, we can't take away without context. We can't teach without dialogue. So it was very difficult to embark on dialogue when the screen or on Zoom, you were being recorded, right? People feel uncomfortable being recorded. People feel uncomfortable sharing their homes with who other students at the time were strangers. So it's no surprise that math scores were down. It's no surprise for any scores to be down. I'm sure reading social studies science were also seen in a negative trend. But I would imagine that the same math that got you all sitting in these chairs right now is the same authentic math that the kids did succeed in at home because of this pandemic. So that statistic kind of, in my opinion, splits the truth a little bit. The other side of that statistic is that students are at home. They're the primary caregivers for their families. They're working. They're recognizing time management. They're recognizing the parameters of a budget. They're engaging in authentic mathematical processes. So while the data might not show that, that is the lived reality, and that occurred. So darn you, 34%, we'll be back. But there was no learning loss, I want to say. There was learning gained because of that very real lived reality. You asked how I see their social emotional competency. I see it as a process. I see us now moving to being more explicit about our emotions, about how we're feeling, and about taking data on our emotions. At Lanier High School, we're attempting our best to gather data on how students are feeling real time so that we can have quick and frequent wraparound support. In the classroom, it means taking pauses to model character, to model decision making, because while this event is going to make history, so are the decisions that we make, right? Do we choose to move forward, be strong, understand that we have massive distractions, but still continue, or do we choose the latter and kind of fold? And I've seen our students take the former. I've seen them move ahead. I've seen them recognize things about them that weren't even caused from the pandemic, things that they realized that they've had all along, whether it's a trauma or a triumph. And I think now we're becoming a lot more comfortable in identifying those things and speaking to one another about them. I think this is also going to elevate voices. I think people see what's going on, so they're going to want to stand up a little more. They're going to want to speak up a little louder. They're going to want to give more heart, and I see that. And again, we're on the process, right? We're not there yet, but you can see it. You can see it, the seeds. You can see them growing.
Absolutely.
May I add a few things? I think it's also important to understand that we were very fortunate. I've always believed God has a plan. And so we actually began working together the year before when this pandemic first hit. But when I came to Lanier, I came with an understanding, and I met teachers as Ms. Abundis, whom I also poached, by the way, and brought her to Lanier. She wanted to come. I was like, I'll go pick you up. And
Any other principals in the room, hide your teachers for
I'm like,
for
and
Dr. Ortiz here.
I always have a business card. So if you're not happy, I see greatness. I have a place for you. And I have some great kiddos. Really was coming together under the umbrella of social justice and really reauthoring the way we did school in the urban core. Our marginalized kids, our disenfranchised families often get treated and educated in a way that is more draconian, that is they're passive participants. They're told what to do. You are in a row. You don't speak until I tell you to speak. You raise your hand. You're going to be tardy. It's very factory-esque, and we know that. And so what we did is we began the shift at Lanier that year to make sure that our kids understood who they were, what their value was, what they brought to the table, their terrific skill sets, the resiliency and champions that they have within themselves to be able to survive what they do. I don't know how many I can't even count how many discussions we have an issue, and I'm sitting with a parent and a student, and we're talking, and my first words are, I am a 50-year-old man, and I can't even imagine what you're going through as a 14-year-old, right? And so all of these ways of teaching, we went to the GRR model with the gradual release of responsibility, in which we put the onus on the students, where we have the students analyze, think critically, defend your points of view. You have one, it's important. And so all of that set us perfectly, poised us well for Zooming with kids, so that our kids could then go out and actually do their own learning and then come back and participate. And so you're absolutely right. Our kids did struggle, but I'm very proud of Lanier that we were above the state level when it came to the drops. So we survived and we did well. And after our first CBA exams, which are exams at the end of the first quarter, Lanier was #1 in mathematics, number 2 in social studies, and #1 in biology, right off the bat. So that is something. And we turned to ourselves and said, and our English scores were right in the middle, and we were like, they're the same kids. They're the same kids, so they should all be performing. But I think it was just a beautiful synergy that came through, and now our kids really are responded. And talk about raising their voices, they surely are. Yeah. Everybody is raising their voices at Lanier High School in a positive way for really unity when it comes to the Bold Blue Way.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Anthony, I want to bring you in for the last couple minutes here, so we don't have a lot of time. But because not everybody gets to see City Year in action every day. So can you give just some examples of how the impact that City Year has on the students that you're working with this year as they've come back into the school building and as they're reintegrating into what life is as a student in 2021?
For sure, absolutely. So I think with all our TLs that are here, the second years, we can really take a grasp that now we're finally seeing our students, like, oh, hey, you're Miss So-and-so, and, we used to see you on the screen, but now you're here in person. So day to day, in the mornings, we'll do first circle with our teams, come together. Really great vibes in the morning to start off with, kick it off, and then we go to the classes. Morning classes, I think a lot of us can agree that they're relatively slow. Students are either still asleep or they just had their breakfast, so they're just all right. After lunch is when it's, I would say the peak of the energy of the students comes in, and they really are enjoying being back. They're really loving, the talking, the communication, the social networking with each other, and I think we play a good role in ensuring that not only are they getting their work done, but also they're building those bonds that they missed out 8th grade. They missed out in 7th grade. If they're, by chance having to redo 9th grade, they're regaining the bonds that they never got, because that's a huge aspect in high school. And, I can speak on behalf of Lanier, but I can always say that both the teachers and the principal always ensure that City Year is valued at where we're at. So I know one thing Dr. Ortiz said was, when he was looking for outside help, he's like, I don't want to get help outside of the school. I know City Year can get it done, and we'll get it done well. So I think that really assured us that we're doing our jobs, we're doing it well. And, whether it's working academics, tutoring sessions, making lesson plans to, do a 15-minute tutoring plan outside of the class after school, or if it's talking to a student because they're not in a great mental state and we're trying to help them, we're trying to coach them, to let them know, hey, take a deep breath. It's going to be okay at the end of the day. Things will turn where they need to be. So,
absolutely, absolutely. And as with all great panel discussions, there never seems to be enough time. Right? So I want to emphasize that this is not the end of this discussion, but this is just really a beginning of this discussion. So I want to thank you all for your attention and your engagement in this conversation. I also want to thank you and challenge you to take this conversation forward in the circles that you walk in and the individuals you talk with, so that we can continue this work of giving our schools and our students everything that they need to dig out of the impact of this pandemic and not just go back to where we were, but to go forward into a new place where students are achieving high and equitable outcomes. Can we give our awesome panelists, these awesome educators, a hand? Thank you so much for doing the hard work every day.
Thank you so much. We really are here to celebrate you all today. So thank you for all of your hard work and kind words. Without further ado, I am going to ask for our executive director, here you are, Kelly Hughes-Burden, to come to the stage.
Good morning. Is this thing on? Okay, I can hear myself. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Hughes-Burton, and I proudly serve as the Executive Director for City Year San Antonio. Thank you, Admiral McRaven, who just had to leave to go back to Austin. Dr. Carney, way to show up. We asked him the night before to moderate that panel. That was incredible. Dr. Ortiz, Ms. Abundis, and Anthony, thank you so much for your incredible service and your commitment to educational equity. We have an incredible turnout this morning. In the audience, we were joined by Congressman Lamar Smith. I just wanted to recognize him. I think he just maybe stepped out. We have our interim superintendent of the San Antonio Independent School District, Dr. Jack Lick. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We have our board president of the SAISD board, Christina Martinez. SAISD trustee, Patty Radel, who oversees all the schools that we were just talked about up here this morning. And some of San Antonio's most prominent philanthropists. Thank you all for being here today. It is so good to see everyone in person. The support of this community is crucial to the work we do, and we deeply appreciate everyone here this morning to show up for students. We all knew the pandemic would impact our students, but as you just heard, we now know what we are up against. It is estimated that students started this school year 6 to 12 months behind, and the data reveals that the most systemically underserved students are experiencing the greatest impact. There is no quick fix. Texas Commissioner of Education Mike McRaven estimates that recovery will take about 5 years. So when all is said and done, this crisis will have lasted a total of 7, right? We had 2 years of the pandemic, 5 years of recovery. This means a student who was in the 3rd grade when the pandemic hit will be entering the 10th grade when this is all over. And we know from research that when a student falls off track between the 3rd and 9th grade, they are far less likely to graduate. The good news is that City Year is uniquely positioned to help. Our AmeriCorps members provide high-quality tutoring, mentoring, and after-school support to help eliminate the systemic inequities in our schools and communities. And we know from a study conducted by the Everyone Graduates Center out of Johns Hopkins University that spending more time with a City Year AmeriCorps member is associated with greater academic outcomes in English and math, better attendance, and stronger social emotional outcomes for students. The research also revealed that the social emotional gains City Year helps students to make is equivalent to a full year of academic growth. And the students who were furthest behind saw the greatest gains by receiving that one-on-one support from a City Year AmeriCorps member. As you heard today, teachers, faculty, staff, and our AmeriCorps members have persevered and shown resilience throughout the pandemic. We celebrate them today not because it's over, but because we appreciate what they have done, and we know that the path ahead will not be easy. As part of this event, it was referenced earlier, we hosted 9 breakfast celebrations at each of our SAISD partner schools to show our school partners that we stand in solidarity with them and with their students. It was also an opportunity to show our school partners that everyone in this audience applauds their work and appreciates their sacrifices. The teachers at Lanier High School, we just heard from one of them, and Mar Hill Elementary were blown away by the generosity of Valero, who gifted $50 gift cards to every teacher in both schools. And our partners, yes, absolutely. Our partners at Sarah King Elementary were thrilled to have Harvey Najum as both the gold and silver in true Harvey fashion to sponsor their breakfast. To all of you who sponsored this event, we want you to know that our school partners and us at City Year are so, so grateful. Your support allows us to show up for students and support our partner schools. If you are able, we hope that you will consider investing in our work, and so many of you have already. There are pledge cards at your table. They're long and red, and there's also information about how to give online if you so choose. You can place any completed pledge cards in the red envelope at your table, and the pledge card has multiple options for giving, but there's one I want to highlight because it's really important. We are in the midst of a challenge grant from Mr. Carlos Alvarez of the Gambrinus Company and the Impetus Foundation. Each year, to meet the challenge, City Year must secure five-year commitments of at least $10,000. And once these gifts are secured, Mr. Alvarez will match these funds 2-to-1 with an investment of $100,000. And several of our generous donors who have helped us to meet this challenge for the last several years are in the room this morning. And today, it is with great pleasure that we announce that we just completed the challenge for the 2021 calendar year. I would like to thank our final Alvarez Challenge champion, Aggie and Roger Graham. Roger is on our board for their 5-year investment, just came in this week. The Grahams, along with the 80/20 Foundation, Caliber Collision, who are over there, hi Caliber, CPS Energy, and Gail and Walter Embry, who are also here this morning with us, allowed us to complete the challenge this year. We want to thank and recognize you all for your support, and we especially want to recognize Mr. Alvarez for his incredibly strategic investment in our work, which helps us to build sustainable funding over time. If you are joining this morning and have already committed to the $10,000 level, or you are close, please know, as we approach the 5th and final year of this challenge, we would love for you to become the first Alvarez Challenge champion in 2022 by making a 5-year commitment. This work doesn't get done without fundraising, so. It is this community of supporters that has allowed us to serve San Antonio for the past 26 years, and when I look across this room, I just can't but help feel deep, deep gratitude to you all. To close this out this morning, I want to take the opportunity to share some bittersweet news. My family and I have made the decision to move back to the East Coast, and for this reason, I will be leaving City Year at the end of this month and stepping down as executive director. I have had the honor of working at City Year and working on City Year for the last 12 years, and have been in this role for the last 6 as executive director for City Year San Antonio, the best site in the network. When I became the executive director, this community welcomed me with open arms, even though I was not from here, and I will never, ever forget that. This organization has shaped me into the person that I am today, and I am so grateful to the San Antonio community. My husband's also here, and San Antonio has just been so, so good to us, and we are deeply, deeply appreciative. Your support over the years has allowed us to show up for students. I feel so lucky to have had the opportunity to learn from and lead such a talented group of staff, board members, and core members. Our board and our amazing executive leadership team are well poised to continue the great work as this organization searches for the next executive director. City Year San Antonio has made an incredible impact over our community over the course of 26 years, and I'm confident that this is just the beginning. So this is certainly not a goodbye, but more of a thank you and to see you soon. So thank you so much for being here with us this morning. We greatly, greatly appreciate it.